So lithium-ion batteries, I mean, they've totally changed our world, haven't they? Everything from the phone in your pocket to electric cars.
Absolutely. Everywhere.
But when we start talking about the massive scale needed for the electric grid, balancing out renewables, well, lithium starts to look a bit tricky. It's expensive, the supply chain is concentrated.
Right. And there are real operational challenges when you scale it up that big for utility use.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We've looked at a bunch of sources, and honestly, it feels like there's this quiet revolution happening just beneath the headlines.
Yeah, it really does. And for you listening, what we found points strongly towards a different kind of battery chemistry really stepping up. We're talking sodium ion or Nion.
And specifically, we're looking at this huge commercial deal, a landmark agreement, really, that seems to validate Nion as a serious contender for utility-scale storage, maybe even the next big thing.
That's the core of it. It's this big agreement that makes you sit up and say, okay, this isn't just lab talk anymore.
So our mission today is to unpack the why. Why this massive deal? Why now? We want to dig into the tech advantages, like this passive cooling idea,
Which is fascinating.
and the cost projections, which seem, well, pretty bold. And also the U.S. strategy angle, trying to build a secure supply chain using something super abundant.
Right. And it all centers on this multi-year deal between Peak Energy, they're a US-based Neon developer, and Jupiter Power. Jupiter is a major player operating huge battery storage systems on the grid already.
So this isn't just a small pilot project.
Not at all. This is Sodium stepping out of the R&D phase and onto the main stage, heading towards, gigascale deployment.
Okay, let's break down this deal then. Who are the players? Peak Energy first, based in California, right? Burlingame.
Yeah, and founded by people with serious experience. We're talking veterans from Tesla, Enovix, Apple. These aren't newcomers.
So they know manufacturing, they know batteries.
Yeah.
And their whole mission seems laser-focused on low-cost grid-scale storage. Not necessarily putting batteries in cars, but big, big grid systems.
Exactly. And their partner, Jupiter Power. They're one of the big developers and operators of what are called BES battery energy storage systems.
The guys who need to make sure power is reliable, dispatchable, ready when needed. They need stuff that works, lasts, and doesn't cause constant headaches.
Precisely. They're looking for long-term reliability and, frankly, lower operational hassle.
Okay, now the scale of this contract, this is where it gets really interesting. Peak Energy is set to supply Jupiter with up to, 4.75 gigawatt hours.
4.75 gigawatt hours. Yeah, that's a massive amount of storage. And it's scheduled for deployment between 2027 and 2030.
Can you help put 4.75 gigawatt hours into perspective? Like, what does that actually power?
Okay, think of it like this. That's roughly the amount of electricity all the homes in a city like San Francisco use in a whole day.
Wow, okay, so definitely not small.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And the first delivery alone, set for 2027, is 720 megawatt hours. That single installation, just the first one, will be the biggest single Nanyon battery deployment announced anywhere in the world so far.
That's a serious commitment. And the price tag reflects that, reported to be over $500 million.
Over $500 million.
So what's pushing Jupiter Power to make such a huge bet on sodium ion right now? I mean, it's still often talked about as emerging.
Well, the sources point directly at the grid needing to get ready for the future, specifically the exploding electricity demand from digital infrastructure.
You mean like data centers?
Exactly. The hyperscalers think Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and especially the massive power needed for AI. It's relentless, always on demand. The grid needs more capacity and, crucially, storage that's super reliable and can be built out fast.
Okay, that makes sense for why they need storage, but why sodium? Hear about battery breakthroughs all the time. What makes this deal feel different? Why isn't this just another promise?
That's the key question, right? And what's really interesting here is that the sheer size of the deal itself kind of validates the underlying tech. For grid storage, you have to shift your thinking a bit. Energy density, how much power you can pack into a small space, like in a phone or car, isn't the number one priority. For grid scale, you're really focused on safety, how long it lasts, and the total cost over, say, 20 years.
Right. If you're building a battery facility the size of a warehouse out near a substation, you don't care so much if it's bulky. You care if it's safe and cheap to run for decades.
Exactly. And this is where sodium ion, especially Peak Energy's approach, seems to offer some really compelling advantages over lithium. A big one is safety and how that ties into cost.
They talk about thermal stability, right?
Yeah, it's inherently safer from a thermal runaway perspective, and this leads to maybe my favorite technical detail from the sources.
Let me guess, the cooling system.
Bingo. It's fully passive. No pumps, no liquid cooling loops, no fans whirring away. It just sits there and manages its temperature.
Okay, passive cooling. Why is that such a big deal for someone like Jupiter Power? Less complexity.
Massively less complexity. Think about it. Fewer moving parts means fewer things can break. It shifts maintenance from needing highly skilled technicians doing frequent, complex work like you might see with some big Lion systems to maybe just infrequent checkups by lower skilled staff.
That must change the financial calculations quite a bit over 20 years. De-risks the whole operation.
Fundamentally de-risks the operational budget, yes. And there's another huge cost saving tied to that passive design: auxiliary power.
That's the power the battery system uses itself just to run.
Yeah, the energy it consumes just to keep itself cool, monitored, and operational. Peak's passive design apparently cuts that self-consumption by up to 97%.
97%. That's huge.
It adds up incredibly over the life of the project. All these things lower maintenance, almost no auxiliary power use. They lead to a dramatically lower total cost of ownership, or TCO.
Okay, TCO makes sense. But you also mentioned longevity. What about degradation? Do sodium batteries last longer?
That's another key claim. They seem to degrade slower than lithium-ion, especially in these grid applications. And this is critical because it reduces something called augmentation.
Augmentation. Can you explain what that means for a grid operator? Why is avoiding it such a win?
Sure. Think of it as the hidden cost in many long-term battery projects. Lithium batteries lose capacity over time, they degrade. So if you signed a 20-year contract to provide a certain amount of power capacity, you might find that after 10 years, your batteries can't hold that much charge anymore.
Ah, so you have to add more batteries just to meet your original contract.
Exactly. You have to augment the system by buying and installing new battery units partway through the project life. That's a massive capital expense you have to plan for years down the road.
So if sodium degrades slower,
You avoid or significantly reduce that need for augmentation capex. Peak Energy claims their system shows nearly 30% better cell degradation performance over 20 years compared to typical lithium-ion.
wow. Okay, 30% less degradation, 97% less auxiliary power, much lower maintenance. You start to see why Jupiter Power would be interested. It's not just one thing, it's the whole package.
It really changes the economics for grid stability, yeah.
Now, if we zoom out a bit,
Mm.
connect this tech stuff to the bigger picture,
Mhm.
the resource security aspect feels potentially massive here.
Oh.
A shift away from lithium dependence.
Oh, absolutely. Sodium is just incredibly abundant. It's the sixth most common element on Earth. Forget mining constraints. Sources estimate there's maybe 500 to 1,000 times more sodium than lithium just in seawater.
It's literally everywhere, cheap and plentiful.
And crucially, domestically available. One of the world's biggest natural deposits of sodium carbonate, a key ingredient, is right here in the U.S., in Wyoming.
So that changes the whole geopolitical game compared to lithium or cobalt, where supply chains can be complex and sometimes unstable.
It's a huge strategic advantage. You minimize worries about running out of the resource, and you gain massive supply chain security and resilience by sourcing it domestically. That's a powerful combination.
Okay, so it's abundant, it's potentially safer, lasts longer, cheaper to run. But what about the initial cost? That's always the big question, right? We're seeing huge growth projected for Narion, like a 26% CAGR reaching nearly $3 billion by 2034. But is it actually cheaper now or soon?
That's where the debate gets really interesting. Peak Energy's COO is making some very bold claims. They predict Narion will hit cost parity, meaning be the same price as the cheapest lithium batteries as early as 2025.
Next year. That's it soon.
Very soon. And they go further, suggesting it could become up to 50% cheaper than lithium in the years after that. Half price.
Okay, half price is a game changer. But
Yeah.
didn't a recent Department of Energy report suggest Neon would still be more expensive in 2030, looking at the levelized cost of storage? How do we square that?
That's a really important nuance, and Peak Energy pushed back on that DOE report. Their argument is basically that the government analysis used older data based on earlier sodium chemistry research, kind of academic stuff.
I'm not reflecting the latest breakthroughs.
Exactly. They argue it didn't account for the advanced materials of cathodes, anodes that industry leaders, especially those ramping up mass production in China, are using now. The technology, particularly materials science, is apparently moving faster than those government projections captured.
Ah, so the real-world manufacturing leveraging newer materials is already driving costs down faster than some models predict.
That seems to be the claim. It implies that the 50% cheaper target isn't just marketing fluff, but based on a different, more advanced manufacturing reality that uses cheaper base materials and simpler, inherently safer designs compared to lithium.
Okay, which brings us neatly to the U.S. strategy piece. Peak Energy wants to be, what do they say, the CATL of America, referencing the huge Chinese battery maker.
Yeah, big ambitions. But they seem realistic about how to get there. They have this phased approach to building up a domestic supply chain.
Phase one is buy cells from China.
Essentially, yes. For now, to meet immediate demand like the Jupiter deal, they're focusing on designing the overall system, the racks, the software, leveraging that passive cooling, but importing the actual Nion cells from China, acknowledging China's head start in cell manufacturing.
Makes sense. You have
Yeah.
to start somewhere. What's phase two?
Phase 2, starting around 2027, is about bringing cell manufacturing here, operating their own U.S. factory. They might still need to import some processed raw materials initially, maybe from China, but the high-value step of making the cells would be domestic.
Okay, building capability onshore. And phase three?
Phase 3 is the long game, a fully domestic supply chain, from digging up sodium carbonate in places like Wyoming, processing it here, making the cells here, building the systems here, complete independence.
So when you put it all together, this Jupiter Power contract feels like more than just a sale. It's like a validation point for this whole strategy, right?
Yeah.
It signals that sodium ion, with its safety, longevity, abundance, and falling costs, is actually ready for prime time, ready to scale.
I think that's exactly right. It feels like a turning point, making Nayun central to U.S. energy goals, especially with the massive power demands coming from AI and general electrification.
And that leads us to a final thought for you to chew on. Think about the difference between relying on a battery tech needing lithium or cobalt with all their geopolitical knots versus one using sodium, something abundant right here, whether from Wyoming rock or eventually maybe even seawater.
Yeah, how quickly could that kind of guaranteed domestic abundance really accelerate the shift to renewables? How much faster could we build out the storage needed for the next wave of digital infrastructure if the core material is cheap and secure? Something to think about.
We'll leave you with that to consider. If you enjoyed the episode, consider following the channel. You can also support me by buying me a coffee through the link in the description. Your support means a lot to me. Thank you for your kindness.